All right, guys. I wanted to come up with a way to kind of conduct like a team meeting, something that I would be able to send to all of my clients, all of my athletes who participated in the Open, to give you guys the best idea of like how we're going to move forward after this Open, what I'm going to do to try and ensure that we're maximizing your performance in the future, and then just giving you some tools to use over the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months, and carry that into the next season, whatever that might be for you, so that you can get the most out of the remote coaching process possible. So I put together a little presentation. This is like I said, this is like my team meeting, and I just want to make sure that you guys get through this and definitely please watch, provide feedback, all that kind of stuff. But all right, let's get into it. So post Open, the theme here is review, plan, and execute, because I think those are the things that are most important. So first and foremost, after the Open, what's next? What you guys should expect? So first and foremost, regarding your training, I think the most important thing is to rest. There is absolutely a necessity for an off season after you get through a 5 week test of your fitness, character, and honestly a test of your soul by the end of the 5 weeks for the CrossFit Open. And everyone who participated is going to need to take some form of a deload no matter what. My suggestions for this time: get out of the gym. I know many of you do work in gyms, you coach classes and things like that, so that's difficult. But if it's possible, create some sort of break. If you have vacation time, take a vacation now. This is one of the things that can be most beneficial to recharging your batteries in the long run. Other things, get out into nature, get out and go for hikes, get out and actually utilize some of this fitness that you spend all this time in the gym building. Utilize it somewhere outside of the gym. If you want to go swim, do some swimming. You want to do some hiking, mountain biking, whatever. Obviously, the weather's changing for most of the people in the U.S., so I know that can be a challenge. But first and foremost, rest. Some of you I'm going to have take shorter breaks because I think the Open was less stressful, whether you repeated the workouts one time or did them, multiples, but didn't seem to break you down. For others who tended to get more and more and more beat up and broken down, I'm going to recommend that you guys take a longer break. All of that will be discussed on an individual basis. So once you do return to training, once you are feeling good and have the hunger to get back into training, I want the majority of you to start with what I would call a training menu, and I'm going to send this out on Monday. Basically, the training menu is a selection of varied types of training sessions. There's no real direction to them. However, these are going to be auto-regulated training sessions. So essentially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put together a training sheet or a training menu that has 2 auto-regulated strength training sessions, 2 auto-regulated weightlifting sessions, which will kind of be focused on some technical aspects and some barbell cycling for the sport of CrossFit. A bodybuilding session, I might create 2 bodybuilding sessions, but something that kind of changes the stimulus from what you guys are used to. Some energy system training support sessions, so that's like things on the erg, some running and things like that. A pair of recovery sessions, one of which is in the pool, because I think having been a swimmer and having used the pool as a recovery tool, I think there's nothing better. One that's in the gym, and then 1 or 2 Metcons, 1 or 2 things that you guys can keep your toes wet for the sport. But what this does is this is essentially a choose your own adventure training menu. You can structure it however you feel like fits your schedule best, but for the majority of you, I want you just to be doing one session for the next week or 2 weeks before we really get into an organized training structure. The other thing that's important is that this actually allows me some time to effectively plan and review. I think, to be completely honest, I know most of you really want or will feel like you want to get back into training pretty quickly. However, I think it's far more important for people who want to actually make progress in the sport or just in their training in general to take the time to go back, review their performance in the Open, look at it with a critical eye, look back at the training that we've done over the past year, decide what things worked best, decide what things didn't work, and then start to create some goals and some plans from there so that we can actually create a season that brings you towards what you want to do, something that's better than what we've done before. And I think just jumping back into training because everyone is used to jumping back into training right after a competition is not the best way to ensure that that happens. So what's going to follow here is going to be essentially my plan for how we get the most out of this upcoming season. And I think I'll probably follow this structure for seasons from here on out. So part 2, review and reflect. So on Monday, I'm going to send you guys a review and reflection worksheet. Essentially what this is, it's an opportunity or a prompt to go back through this past season and look at the training you've done, look at your behaviors, look at the habits that you have, and see what we can improve to create a better training season coming up. And then I also want to go back and look at your performance in the Open, but I don't want to dwell on. I don't want anyone dwelling on the Open. I think what I've found from working with high-level athletes and people that are not even necessarily high-level athletes, just people that see success in their training, they tend to have a very short memory for failure and a long memory for success. And so I think going back through, drawing the lessons, figuring out what mistakes were made and how we can learn from those mistakes is most important, but not necessarily going back through and like dwelling on the workouts that you didn't do well on. Let's learn the lessons and move forward. So some points here. Number 1, make sure you fill out that review and reflection worksheet prior to your post-open call. I think it will help me guide the discussions much better if I have better context regarding how you assessed your performance in the Open, what you think worked well for you over the past year. Besides, I think having some sort of buy-in to your program is one of the most important things that can drive success in the long run. Like I said before, it's necessary to learn and grow, and I think writing it down, even actually writing it down with a pencil or saying it out loud, has been shown to create stronger memories. However, that's almost impossible to communicate things that way. So, communicate that back to me. I'm going to send it out, fill it out, and we're going to use this to guide your goal setting and your season structure. So the next step, and this also is going to need to happen before we actually get into our post-open calls, but that's our goal setting process. This is something that I've been thinking about quite a bit over the last couple of weeks during the Open, and I've been playing around with different ways to structure this. And I think what I want to do is give everyone a goal setting worksheet. It's not something I've done in the past, but I think committing to a goal by writing it down and sharing it with someone is probably one of the most powerful things that you can do to drive your own commitment to whatever it is you've laid out. So the goal setting worksheet is going to focus on 3 things: a vision goal, a process goal, and a performance goal. And I'm going to have, well, it's actually going to be a vision goal, multiple process goals, and multiple performance goals. But to give you a good idea of what these are, the vision goal is like the big overarching theme. This thing's outcome focused. In our sport, I think for a lot of people, it's like qualify for a sanctional, qualify for the CrossFit Games, move up to top 10,000 in the Open, something like that. That's an outcome goal. Those are things that we don't actually have control over because they are not predicated upon, like they're not things that we have control to determine the outcome of. We only can control our behaviors, our focus on the process, our focus on performance. But I think you have to have this vision in order to create a good guide or direction to your season. So this is what gives our plan direction. I tried to use an analogy here or an example of climbing Mount Everest as our example. So let's say I wanted to climb Mount Everest. This would be my vision goal, make it to the top. And then what we're going to do with the process and performance goals is break down how we're going to achieve that. So the second part is our process goal. And like I said, this is kind of how do we achieve it. This thing is our guide. It tells us what behaviors we need to engage in consistently or what behaviors we need to eliminate in order to achieve whatever that vision goal is. So some examples of this regarding, in the climbing Mount Everest goal would be, number 1, engaging in altitude training 3 times per week, seeking out a facility that allows you to do simulated altitude training, or if you live somewhere where you can do it, making sure that you're engaging in it 3 times a week. including 1 hour of route study 3 times per week. Because when you get up there and you're fatigued, you need to know the routes by heart. You should, if you've ever watched any of the free solo type climbing movies, you can see that the amount of research that they do before they achieve one of those goals is intense. And I think the same is true in this sport, that the people who are successful at the top are constantly seeking information from competitors, from their coach, from their peers. And I think that's probably a good example of that. And then the other one would be a long ruck, 5 to 8 miles, 6 times per week. Again, just getting the basic training in that's required in order to climb Mount Everest. Those are process goals. What those will look like for you, I think it's going to be completely individual. And that's why I didn't want to give a CrossFit or fitness-based example of process goals, because I want those to be your individual and unique things. And then there's performance goals. These are the SMART goals that I think most people have heard of. They're time bound, and I think they're most applicable within your training or within a competition. So examples of these might be things like reach Everest Base Camp in 8 days. That's an attainable goal for someone who's trying to climb Mount Everest. And 8 days gives you your time bound, and it also helps you break down how far you need to go. So it's about 65-mile trek to Everest Base Camp. And so if you want to achieve that, you've got to cover 8 to 9 kilometers per day. Some examples of performance goals for you guys might be setting like 1RM targets for your weightlifting, or setting a target for your 10-minute max calorie assault as a measurement of your aerobic fitness. Setting performance goals that you and I have both discussed, I think, is one of the most important things for helping to guide your training and for you to kind of keep on the path. Your performance goals should be guided by your process goals, and your process goals are obviously guided by your vision goals. So we'll start from the vision and work our way down. Again, I'm going to send out a worksheet on this on Monday, and we're going to need to make sure that we have those filled out before we get onto our calls. Finally, planning calls for post-open. First and foremost, I want to make sure that I get these set up sometime between Thursday, November 14th and Thursday, November 21st. So that's a 1 week span to make sure that we come up with a time to actually get these calls scheduled. I'm going to be doing some traveling the week of November 23rd, and we'll definitely have limited availability then. So we need to make sure that we get these calls scheduled before that. That way we can get plans in place and start to get some back into a training rhythm at least a week to a week and a half after the end of the Open. So what are we going to do on the calls? First and foremost, we're going to go back and discuss your review and reflection worksheet. I think, like I said, I want to use that as the guide. That's what's going to direct our conversations there. And then we're going to discuss the goal setting worksheet, because that is what's going to determine how I structure your training. So both those need to be filled out before we get onto our calls this coming week or the week after. We're going to use these things to work together to create your plan. I have, over time, shifted so far away from a program-centric training or coaching model to an athlete-centric coaching model. Athlete-centrism to me means that the athlete is the object of control. The individual, is the one that dictates how the program progresses, what the periodization looks like. And I think it needs to be a team effort. And yes, I recognize that I've been doing this for a long time and that I have a lot of experience doing this, but I also trust my athletes. I trust you and your gut instincts. Now, are there going to be times where I'm going to say, I think that's too much, I don't think that's a good idea, or I've tried that many times in the past and it hasn't worked? Absolutely. But I think we need to work together to integrate processes and performance goals that will lead to your vision or your end goal. I think that's kind of the big takeaway there. And then you and I will work to create an execution plan to put it into place. The execution plan will be the actual training program and your ability to adhere to that training program. And I think if we go through this process, review, goal setting, vision setting, process setting, and then create the plan, I think everyone's going to be more bought into their training program and more likely to succeed in the end. And that's really what I'm trying to help everyone achieve here, is maximal success. So here's the flow. On Monday, after the open, so after 8 p.m., I'm going to send out, like I said, the review and reflection worksheet, the goal setting worksheet. Those things need to be filled out before calls. So I'm scheduled, like I said, I'm scheduling calls starting this coming Thursday. And in the meantime, most of you, I want to rest. I've gone through, I'm going to discuss this individually with most people, but we're going to rest. Then you're going to begin with the training menu until we've had a chance to sit down on our call, review your goals, review the past season, and create a training plan that makes sense and will lead you to what you want to achieve. I don't want any aimless training. I think that training to train is a waste of everyone's time. So instead of writing training to train, I'm going to create this training menu, and that's what we'll start with. If you guys have any questions, let me know, and we'll get rolling with this stuff, and hopefully we can see some success this year. Thanks, guys.